Story 1. I haven't seen any novelists in the replies, so I'll add my 2 cents. At university, I wrote my dissertation on mother-daughter relationships in the work of Alice Munro. The title was Motherhood and Otherhood. After she passed away this year in her 90s, her daughter, Andrea, revealed that she was abused by her stepfather, who admitted it and went to prison. Then, when he was released, Alice stayed with him because she loved him too much. Poor Andrea. It's extremely upsetting, and it raises questions about Munro's legacy and the recognition of her Nobel Prize. Story 2. I grew up in an era where Bill Cosby was the wholesome, upright family comedian. I listened to his stand-up on cassette tapes, for gosh sake. Finding out that he was a scumbag and had been for a long time was sad. Story 3. Rolf Harris was an Australian icon. Everyone in Australia could recognize him and knew at least one of his songs. His paintings were displayed in galleries and buildings across the country. Turned out he was molesting underage girls. Almost as soon as he was arrested, his paintings were taken down and plaques dedicated to him disappeared. His music was removed from radio stations. There were some holdouts, but those gave in after he was convicted. The creepiest part? In the 1980s, he filmed an educational video that taught children how to avoid being molested. When he died, his family kept his death a secret for 10 days so protesters wouldn't find out and disrupt his funeral. Story 4. Honestly, I thought Thomas Edison was a pretty brilliant guy until I learned what happened between him and Nikola Tesla, and also all the stupid patent laws Edison lobbied for. Story 5. I used to like Gwyneth Paltrow. I found her really compelling on screen. Nowadays, though, I'd be pretty ashamed to identify myself as one of her fans. Turns out she's a bit outlandish in real life. Story 6. Jared Leto. I really enjoyed his movie performances up until and including Dallas Buyers Club. I also quite liked his band, 30 Seconds to Mars. Their album, A Beautiful Lie, is what first got me into rock. I saw them live in 2010, and his performance was honestly so mediocre that it disillusioned me on his music in a significant way. He was really lazy and got the audience to sing most of the songs they performed. The rest of the band was all right, but Leto's performance was such a letdown. Then, a while later, he was the Joker in that terrible Suicide Squad movie in 2016, and since then, I've only heard really cringe things about who he is as a person, for example, diva-type behavior and his weird fan cult. Nowadays, I cringe at the fact that I used to like or admire his work. He's actually the same age as my mom, but behaves like someone younger than me. To be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if it came out that he was taking advantage of his young and impressionable female fans either. Dude lives and breathes cringe, in my opinion. Story 7. It, in retrospect, seems so obvious, but he was so eloquent in Bowling for Columbine, and I was a weird punk goth kid that escaped into music. Story 8. In general, a lot of the rock stars from the 1960s to the 1980s were idolized by many growing up. People blended their styles to look cool, or so they thought, and tried their best to play guitar like them. Then the Me Too movement came about, and it was realized that the majority were complete perverts who wrote about such themes in their music. I always tended to listen to rhythms and guitar rather than the vocals, but now I can't listen to some tracks that were once adored. Story 9. I had the biggest crush on James Franco, and now it's pretty clear that he's a complete creep, who writes a story about a high school girl being groomed by her teacher and then acts as that teacher in the film he directed himself. And that's only the tip of the iceberg with him. He's had multiple allegations of sexual misconduct, including with girls under 18, and has admitted to having sex with his own students. Story 10. Oprah Winfrey started her segment when Tom Cruise was on and referred to Nicole Kidman as Nick. After that, she began calling her Nick too. Then, at the Emmy Awards, she was announcing the Best Daytime Talk Show host and reminded everyone that she had kept herself out of the running, prompting the audience to shower her with cheers. Eventually, I got tired of her promoting herself everywhere, either as a spiritual leader or guru, and that was before the issues with Harvey Weinstein and others came to light. Story 11. Henry Ford. I dislike him because I actually learned more about him. I thought the allegations of anti-Semitism were just made up to smear campaign him. No, the books you grow up reading do the opposite. They paint him as a much better person than he really was. It should say enough that he ran a union-busting operation under the title of Ford Service Department that was involved with inciting a massacre of impoverished employees no less, and the death of a union head in another incident. Also, he got credit for inventing the assembly line. He automated it, but Ransom Olds actually invented it. Then there's the matter of taking advantage of the Dodge brothers and stockholders of the company. Not to mention, he was such a staunch anti-Semite that Adolf Hitler himself kept a prized autographed photo of Henry and awarded him the highest honor Nazi Germany could bestow on a foreigner. This isn't getting into just his company as a whole, which even contributed to 1/3 of Germany's trucks during World War II, even being made using slave labor of the same ethnic groups they refused to hire back in the US. Story 12. I can't say I ever admired him as much as I thought his endeavors were cool, and to be fair, they still are mostly. But isn't it crazy that Elon Musk has had the biggest fall-off reputation-wise out of anyone I have ever seen? He went from being the internet's golden beacon. Real-life Tony Stark was a phrase frequently used to describe him. He went from that to the overwhelming majority of people now thinking he is just completely stupid, and all because he started speaking freely on Twitter, which I think is hilarious. The minute he started to freely speak his mind was the minute people started to realize that he is not at all the genius savior of humanity his public relations/marketing team made people believe he is. Story 13. The Rock. He has become so fake and overmanaged. The man is like a walking billboard for his investments. He seems to have no real opinions about anything. Kind of goes along with he is a corporate spokesman and politician. His movie selection has become absolutely terrible. The final boss was great, though. I will give him that. Story 14. I didn't realize Blake Lively had such an unpleasant attitude until this last film promotion. Her disagreeable personality really became apparent. Disappointing indeed. Story 15. Oprah. I wanted to be her as a young black girl in a predominantly white town. I read all about her in elementary school, even dressed up as her for our history class project. The more I read about her, the more disappointed I became. I'm still impressed by what she's done for herself, but I wish she would have maintained being a good person too. Story 16. Jackie Chan was once beloved in Hong Kong due to his charity work ethic, and having an outward persona of being a kind individual. However, over the years, it has leaked that he had a drinking problem, was involved in cases of domestic violence, prostitution, and he promoted Chinese government propaganda in order to make money in the mainland with state-backed movie companies. He also became a government spokesperson, often attacking freedom of speech and freedom of protest in Hong Kong on Chinese television. He somewhat sold out his own home, the very place that started his movie career. Story 17. Anthony Kiedis, the lead singer of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Growing up, I had all their CDs. Later, I learned that he was involved with an underage girl. I also saw a video of an interview where they were all clearly under the influence, walking around erratically and looking under the dress of the interviewer. The host ended the interview because it was unproductive. Story 18. I used to enjoy Jimmy Fallon, but then I realized his interview style is awful, pandering, fake, and smarmy. Laughing excessively at everything is too much. I haven't watched him in years. Story 19. Rob Schneider. I loved him as the Stapler, but I lost a lot of respect for him when I found out he treated the cast of A Carrot viciously and seditiously. Story 20. Kelly Ripa. I did freelance production work for the American Broadcasting Company from 2004 to 2006. She was the most unfriendly and pretentious person I have ever met. Regis Philbin was a dream to work with. He was a true class act. Story 21. I don't hate him, but my opinion of Will Smith has fallen off a cliff. I grew up with him as my movie hero. I'm not mad that he slapped Chris Rock. I'm mad that he thinks he didn't do anything wrong. He just went about his night, didn't apologize to Chris, barely even acknowledged it except to somehow congratulate himself for moving on from the thing he did like 10 minutes prior. Hitting someone live on TV can be salvaged if you recognize what you did. Hitting someone live on TV and acting like you have been inconvenienced for having hit them is not. Story 22. Elon Musk. Now, he is an absolute person whom I have strong feelings against. Also, Demi Lovato back in her Disney days. Now, she comes across as a 30-year-old high school mean girl, the way she behaves negatively towards others and then portrays herself as the victim. Story 23. MIA and Kanye. Both musicians who seemed so self-assured and like such subversive artists in their own ways, both went off the deep end into some hateful behavior, Kanye especially. Story 24. I used to admire Ellen DeGeneres for her humor and advocacy, but after hearing about her toxic work environment, I lost respect for her. It's disappointing when someone you looked up to turns out to be very different behind the scenes. Story 25. I was introduced to Woody Allen by a staunch Woody Allen apologist, surprisingly a woman, and I was very impressionable. I loved his movies. I've always loved New York City Jewry, am Jewish and lived in New York City for nearly a decade, and his neurotic humor really did it for me. But man, as I got older and less impressionable, I couldn't get over the fact that he basically married his stepdaughter. I know they've been together for more than 25 years or whatever, and I know there are exceptions to most rules, but it still doesn't sit right with me. Story 26. Honestly, all of them. I grew up watching old classic Hollywood films and eventually read a bunch of biographies and histories of celebrities of the time. It was interesting, but also wiped away the sheen of the thing. Modern celebrities are even worse. They have a much larger disconnect from normal society. They are treated like infallible figures, and the reality is they got lucky and will do everything to keep their power and wealth. I can't think of one celebrity I would help if they were in dire need. If they seem like one of the good ones, at this point, I generally just assume they're good at keeping their heads down and hiding their bad behavior. On the unlikely chance they're not engaging in bad actions, they're almost definitely complicit through silence. Story 27. I don't hate her, but I'm terribly disappointed in Roseanne. I had always liked the show, liked that it pressed the right buttons on some people. I even got a kick out of her national anthem performance. I mean, what the hell did people expect? And it was great. But then she had to go and muck it all up with the racist comments, and it's been downhill since. Story 28. It pains me to say this as I was his biggest fan, but Eminem. I met him once, and he told me if I came to his show, he would meet me afterward. I waited for him with my little brother, who loved him even more than I did. To him, Eminem was his idol. We waited for 4 hours in the blistering cold, and when he saw us, he just said no. Story 29. I'm late, but Francis Ford Coppola, he not only paid for Victor Salva's legal defense in a case where he was accused and convicted of sexual assault on a minor, an actor in one of Salva's first movies. Coppola then had his lawyers sue the child's family and had said child blacklisted from ever professionally acting again. Story 30. Chris Pratt. He was awesome in Parks and Recreation, and I loved the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but his life choices once he became a Marvel actor and how he continues to behave in an unpleasant manner have me feeling disappointed. Story 31. Eric Clapton. Love his music, and he was one of my favorite guitarists. When I found out he is an anti-vaccine, anti-immigrant bigot who also used to batter his wife, things changed. Samuel Eto'o. Loved him as a player, but now he is seen as a corrupt individual. He has also abandoned one of his children despite it being proven he is actually the father. Story 32. A long time ago, I said I really admired Tom Cruise. I stated that not only is he a great actor, but you never really hear about him being dramatic or causing any drama. Literally, that same year, he was jumping on a couch about Katie Holmes, and I found out he was a Scientologist. Other than that, Bill Cosby. I loved The Cosby Show growing up. It was funny and a great show about an American family. Then I found out he was a rapist, and it seemed like everyone in Hollywood knew. Story 33. John Mulaney is not just known as a family man, but also as someone who chose not to have children. However, he then consumed an excessive amount of cocaine in New York City, sought treatment, and became a stereotype of early recovery. This stereotype involves a person getting sober, leaving their devoted partner, and quickly starting a relationship with someone new, which is the exact opposite of what is recommended for maintaining long-term sobriety. In Mulaney's situation, He started a relationship with a Hollywood attention seeker who seemed to have intentions towards him even while he was married, leading him to abandon everything he once stood for. Story 34. I used to admire Elon Musk. He was doing all the things I would have been doing if I had billions of dollars: electric cars, spaceflight, neural implants. Then, around the time of the Thai cave rescue, he went off the rails. Now, I just hate seeing his face. I would never buy a Tesla because I can't support him in any shape or form.